But this is the guy I wanted to come to. So this is the walk cycle that I did in class last week. A little hiccup as it restarts itself, but back and forth. I did this by rotating upper body parts. So this guy's all blown up in all his different body parts here, right? We looked at this. And then using the free transform tool, rotated them as needed. And then that's what we end up with this. So I'll do a bunch of Command Z's, get them back together. So then the end result is this character walking here. So does anyone need a break? What I'm going to do is go through how to export them from here and then bring them into After Effects to set up the walk cycle. So then what I'm going to do is come to this, and we're going to create this. Let's do view, decrease size, make it a little easier to see. So we have a background, and now that I've added the zoom in here, we don't need the zoom. I was just trying something with that. But we have the parallax panning with this is moving faster than that. The trees are moving faster. And this is what we're going to go for. Put a little ground shadow on there. That's not necessary, but show you how you could do something like that. So it's taking limited animation and just trying to make it work as opposed to drawing every frame. Now you can draw every frame. Once we do this more often, this way is much quicker. I know it's a learning curve for all of us on this, but once we do it, to do it this way is a lot quicker than if you were to draw it, do the finished lines, color it, bring it in, color each frame, bring it in and do this. It does take more time. All right. We ready to go forward? I'm gonna have some coffee here. Nothing left. All right. Minimize this. All right. So I have this. I'm happy with the walk cycle. This is out on my scene one. It's out in the open, so it's not nested in my library. It is scene one, and that's what you want to have when you're ready to export it. So I have my, well, so he's going the opposite direction. It's easy to flip it horizontally once we bring it in, or you can have it walk that way. That part of it is an easy fix. So to export this, I'm going to suggest we export it as a PNG sequence. In a PNG sequence where the transparency behind it will enable us to bring it in as import that sequence into After Effects and set the frame rate to what we want it to be. In this case, we're working at 12 frames per second. It's a good way to get into practice of doing this. I'm going to show us that. And this is also good when you're working in 3D and you start, and I know a lot of you will be doing that. And if you're working in 3D, when you export a finished character from 3D and you want to import it and make a movie, but 3D, when you have a lot of rendering going on and lights, it makes, if you start making a movie and you start rendering and halfway through the movie, the 3D rendering crashes, you lose everything. So it might have taken like 5 hours and you have another 3 hours to go to finish. I mean, this is worst case scenario type of deal. And your scene, you have to start over again if you started it as a movie. But if you export it as an image sequence, whether it's Targa, is it a name? What's the other one? But Targas are high resolution, not compressed images that you can export from any 3D program. If you do an image sequence and say it crashes halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, you could start from the frame that it crashed at and finish and get your remaining frames. You're not starting over from scratch. And we learned that the hard way. I personally wasn't a 3D person where I worked, but we, in the mid 90s and early 2000s, was 3D started becoming more of a thing. We started doing that where I worked, and some of the guys I worked with, they were doing the 3D stuff, and they had some of those crashes, and they learned, it's like, nope, we export them as image sequences. And then you, if it's a whole scene, or sometimes it would combine things in After Effects, as we're going to do here, you can import them in as image sequences, and it works fine. So that's what we're going to do, and that's why. So I'm going to go to File, Export. Now, we have done video before, and that's if we're going to make it a straight movie, we would do video. But to do the image sequence, we're going to do Export Movie. And this is just the way Animate's set up. So we're going to do Export Movie. And as this comes up, it says SWF as the default file format. And what I want to do is change it to a PNG sequence. So by changing it to a sequence there, so the default to say SWF, change it to PNG. And then I want to make a folder because it's not a lot of frames. It is 10 frames, but instead of being 10 frames floating out here in here, I am going to make a new folder. And I'm going to call it Isaiah Walk. And PNG sequence, PNGs, and I'm just going to do 2020, and then I did this earlier, so I'll do 2. So just give it a name of the folder so you know what you're going to be looking for, hopefully. I'll put it in here. I did have that. That's probably what I used the last time. So I have that, and then I'll hit create. And when I hit save, it's going to give me some options. I think it comes up. Yep. So I get my export. So what would I want to do? I'll keep the size, resolution, DPI. Full document size, I'm going to want. Minimum document area, actually, if I pick that, that will just get to the character. And because I don't have a background, and I'll do that. The key thing that I want to do here is change this to 32-bit. 32-bit means it will put a transparency behind it. So let's see, when I went to 24-bit, it asked me what background. Stage color is white here. If I had opaque, it would make it white, but let's say I had a blue background, you know, that's not going to be a difference. But it's giving me an option of what I want for the background, because if it is at 24-bit or 8-bit, it will be like a JPEG. It will not be transparent, and we need it to be transparent. So we need to choose 32-bit, and now there's no option for a background here. So we want 32-bit, and that's going to make it with an alpha channel, so to speak, when we make it into a video. But it will have a transparent background, so it's just going to be whatever's colored with the kid here. And the minimum image area will just get the walk cycle. It won't get my full document. 300 DPI is a little bit overkill. Can I change that? I could go 150. Yeah, I can change that there. So 150 DPI is probably better. You know, print is 300. Working in animation, I would say 150. You're good. And the smooth you want. So when if it does do it, because it is vector art now, it is gonna, by making it a PNG, if we're exporting to a video, also it will turn it into raster art. It's just going to do that. Once we leave Animate here, unless we state as SWF, it would be there, but this is going to change it into raster art, so that's all right. I'm going to hit export. So I exported those. Find it. Walk cycle. All right, so this is one I just made. And these are my PNGs. So I'll just open them up just to see. Right. So we have our walk cycle. And we can't tell it's on transparency here, but it should be. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have that part taken care of. Where do I have my After Effects? Okay, so I downloaded this background. So I have the character, he's exported out, and then next thing I'm gonna look at before I bring it in, I need to create a background. So for the background, and this is and I do have a whole video on setting this up here, but we'll look at this. And I think my video, I would go with the older format. Let's go with trying to make our movie at the 1280, 720. The video says 720, 480. I mean, if you just watch the video and you forget this, that's fine too. But we want to have an oversized background. So let me see, do I have, yeah, I have this. So I did have it set up 720, 540, and I made this frame. So if we go with this, that's fine. I have this framing here, and this is what our camera will see. So we go with the 720, 540. I do need to update this, but for now, we're going with this. So with that 720, 540, this shows me what my camera will see, but my background needs to be larger than that. It's almost 4 times as large. If I look at this background thing, so if I shift this, I'm trying to get it. So right, if you look at this, there's probably 4. I could do the math on it. So this is 720 wide. And where's my mathematic guys? I go image size. I'm going to go to pixels. And it's 3200. So 720 times 4, is that 3200? Is that about right? Somebody in there, let's go here. 720 times 4. 2880. So I even made it a little bigger. So the reason being, because we have to move it through the scene. I'm going like this and I don't have the camera on. I'm moving my hand. Sorry, guys. But we're going to move it from right to left through the scene, depending on which direction our character, most likely it's going to be right to left. And we'll do that just to keep it consistent. We'll move it right to left through the scene. So it's going to move. So we're going to set it up. So we want it larger. So we have more to draw in there. But what we also want to have is like 3 layers. So you want to have some type of foreground layer. So if you're doing a street scene, maybe a mailbox, a fire hydrant, a street sign, something that's going to be in the foreground like these trees are. I have 2 trees. You can have 2 things in the foreground. So I have these foreground elements. So they'll be closer to the camera. I have a midground where the character is going to be walking. So the midground is this area here. This is where it's going to be in the same plane, the same area where the character is going to be walking. And then actually with 4 layers, this has 4 layers, has the mountains. So they can move slightly. So I have the mountain layer, and they'll move slower because I'm going to put them back in space, get that parallax pan that we want to try to get. And then I have a sky background. And the sky is just a gradated thing there. Now you can do yours in color. I wanted the character in color. I'm not expecting you to do a full background in color. I did want us to do the character to have that. If you want to make a cool background, color background, that's all good, but it does not need to be in color. It does help that it has opacity, though the gray is in there, so we can just kind of see. If it was just lines, you can do it because we do pencil test, and that they work when you do just lines, but putting a little bit of solidness into it there. So I'm not looking for a finished background. I'm not going to be, but I do want the layers. I will be looking for the different layers. So a foreground layer, a midground layer, and a background layer. When that background layer is the trees, or if you had buildings, depending on what you have in your in your scene where your character is, and that's going to kind of dictate what you want to put in your background in that part of it. But it is, so size-wise, I do have a little play top and bottom. So my theory is it's better to have too much background than not enough. So I don't, and we will see when we bring it in there, we kind of can enlarge and expand things. But it's good to try to set it up as best you can. And so the expanding that you're doing is not going to be too much. You may have to expand stuff because you'll see when we get into the 3D world in After Effects, some things will get smaller as we push them back in space, like the mountains, and we'll just stretch them out. But it's okay because they're going to be further back. We're going to put a little blur on them so they're out of focus. So the stretching of them is not going to hurt the pixel enlargement or pixel deterioration that may happen because we'll blur it and put it back in space. All right, so you want to get your background set up. It's good to have it named and layered. I have the wolf here as this was a character that I had done in a previous time. And I did, so if I take that wolf character, let's say he's going to start over here. It's going to bring him back. And I have that rule of thirds, so maybe it's going to start there, and then I'll follow this character. So the idea that we're going to do is that that red box is going to move across the screen, and the camera is going to follow this character as it walks through this scene. So that's the goal that we're trying to do here. So set up your background. I exported the character, and now I'm going to go into After Effects. And I have this one, but I'm going to create a new one. So new project. No, I won't save this one. So new project comes in. Now I have a blank screen. So who in here is, I'm going to look it up, just seeing it. I think everyone here except Alec has worked with After Effects. Is that correct? So give me, if you haven't worked with After Effects, type it in or let me know. Right? Okay. So I think most of you, so watch the videos. If you get the video exported, Alec, I just want to see where you get with yours. So I know you haven't used After Effects. Those of you who have used After Effects, it's just a way, and I like this because this is what we do as so Brianna, you haven't worked with it, huh? Okay. So I thought you were in that class too, but you're not. All right. I think you'll be able to pick it up. Follow along here, and I do have the videos, and if you have issues, then we can look at it. We'll look at what I need to do to help you get it in there. And you too, Alec. So get the walk cycle to work, get your backgrounds built, and then I can work with you guys to make this work if it's too much. But follow along and see where I'm doing it in just, all these programs. If you do something in Photoshop, you do something in Animate, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. I'm going to try to keep this one targeted to that. Even if you never used this before, you will be able to do this. So it is good in our industry, and what we do as production artists and creating animation and doing different things. We'll be jumping between these different Adobe products, and so that's why I like doing it this way. You get the Parallax pan effect that we're going to go for here is a cool effect, and it's not hard to do once you do it 2 or 3 times. The first time, yeah, everything's a learning curve, but as you do it, and it makes your work look that much deeper and more involved. And we're doing this with limited animation, so we're making this even look cooler without spending tons of time doing it. That's our goal, right? We want to make something that we can impress our clients, do it at an affordable rate, that we can do it in a time frame that we can do it. That's kind of the main goal that we're shooting for in this project and going forward. Okay, I have After Effects open. So what I'm going to do is import, which one to import in first? I'm going to go back to my background and close that because I'm going to import that in. I don't want to save it. Don't save. Either one I can port in. Let's go with the background first. So when After Effects opens up, come back to After Effects. So if you never used After Effects before, let me just do that. Just take 2 seconds. Quit After Effects. Boom. Come back to After Effects down here. Open it. And I'm just going to show the dialog box that will come up. Takes a few seconds here. And I get this about my disk thing, and that's okay. Just keep that. I hit OK there. Then this window will come up the first time if you're using After Effects, and projects that you made will show up here. But if you're going to do a new project, in this case, we're not opening one. We're going to do a new one. What it's going to do is basically get us to that screen I was just at, but it just closes this front screen. So I choose New Project, and now I'm back here. So I want to import something in. In After Effects, you don't open things into it. You import it in. So it's very similar to working with Premiere, that in Premiere, the files don't get embedded into After Effects. They're imported in and they're referenced to where they are in your computer. So you need to know where things are in your computer and you to your file when you're working with it. To import it in, I will go to File, Import, Import File. And I want to look for where I have that on my computer. So I'm going to go back to here, back to Animation 1 class, and my walk cycles. And it was the, so this one that I'm working with, I brought it down from Canvas. So this background is on Canvas. It's something you can download with all the templates. So if you want to download this and use it as a guide to build your backgrounds, you can do that. So this is what I want. Now, this is key. Once I select that PSD file of the background that I want to bring in, I have all those layers. Remember we looked back at, we named our layers in Photoshop. We have them separated out. We do not want to import it as footage. We do it as a composition and not, I'm going to stop a second. We could do retain layer sizes. That will work too. So the difference between retain layer sizes and composition is competition retain layer sizes. If I just had that red box of the 740, 480, 540 size, it's going to crop it to just the size of that box. So it'll crop each individual layer to the size of the element that exists on the layer. So that's what retain layer sizes is. When I choose just composition, it's going to do the full, each layer is going to be the full size of the full composition. When we bring it in, it's still going to position them and put them where we need them to be. So we're going to choose a composition retain layer sizes. And we don't want to create composition. We don't want that Photoshop sequence. We do not want those checked. And then I'll say open. And then this brings up a second dialog box, and you could change your mind here. You don't want merge layer styles in the footage for this. We'll just keep editable layer styles. Really, we're not going to be doing much with either of that, but we'll just keep it at that. That choice comes up again, retain layer sizes or as a composition itself. I'm going to keep it at the retain layer sizes and just hit OK. So it brought it in, and it brought in the different layers. So here in this folder, here are all the different layers, but we're not going to need those. It also, because it said make a composition, is what we chose, composition retain layer sizes, it created this composition. And the composition is represented by this little film strip with and if you look closely, it's a circle, triangle, and a square rectangle there inside a film strip. If I double click on the film strip itself, it opens it up. And here's my background, all the different layers. And if I select a tree, Yeah, I did tree number 2. Let's see something here. See how it cropped it to the size of the tree? So that's what retain layer size does. It crops it to the size of the element. That everything's still lined up where they were in my Photoshop document to the size, but it crops them. So I take my mountains, and what I'm doing is hitting this solo little white dot aligns with that. The solo's just the mountain layers. So if I select that, it cropped it so it's not all the way to the top here. It cropped it in there. All right, we have that, and we're going to come back to this later. So we imported in our background. We did it as a composition, retain layer sizes, and then we clicked on it to open up the composition, and this is what we have. So now I want to import in my exported PNG sequence. So I'm going to go up to File, Import again, Import File, and find where I have that, and it's in my walk cycles, in Isaiah walk cycle, and the one I did today was this Isaiah walk PNGs, this one. So I'll open that folder up, and that's another reason you want to put it into a folder, because I only want to bring in these files. I don't want to bring any extraneous files into this sequence, because it converts it into a video for us. Now this is key also. I don't select all of them. I just select the first one. So just select the first one. And then down here, we have this choice, PNG sequence. It recognizes them as PNG, so that's what it's going to do. So I do want to click that. And force alphabetical order, I don't need to click that. They are numerically in order here, so they should be good. So you select the first one, and then make sure you have PNG sequence checked, and then click open. And I'm going to look at this as I open this up here. I'm going to just expand this, and it brought in 1 through 10, so I know it did bring it in, and it is on black. And when I see this millions of colors plus, that's telling me it has an alpha channel. So we did export it out at the 32-bit. We wanted it to have a transparent background to it. So we brought that in. And so that's key there. He's facing this way, the background's there. I could have walk. I'm gonna just flip it, and then when I bring it in, it's straight. So there's a couple things I have to do first is to set my speed of this, because it brings it in by default at 30 frames per second. And I want to set it to 12 frames to match what I did in Animate. It was moving at 12 frames per second. So I do need to do a step before I bring it into a composition. So I need to select it, right click, and we want to choose Interpret Footage Main. And I do have videos, and I'm recording this too, but there are a video out there that goes through these steps. So Interpret Footage Main. I'm gonna bring this up. So assume this frame rate. So by default, it does it at 30. We want to type in 12 there. And because it is a cycle, and I wanted this to keep repeating, it's 1 through 10, 1 through 10. Down at the bottom, it has this loop. And by default, it says 1 time. I wanted to make my composition to be maybe about 8 seconds long, so I can see my character walking. I think I tell us it has to be 5 seconds. You can be 5. 5 goes quick, so I guess I'll go 5 just to do it. But I want to repeat this, so I'll do 10 times, and 10 times should be enough. Yeah, maybe I'll just push it up. I'll go 20 times. It doesn't matter. It's better to have extra of the kid walking than not enough. So I'll loop it. So it's just going to keep looping. So I typed in loop 20 times. It brought that in. If I hit guess here, let's see what it does. It did pre-multiplied. So this might not be a bad thing to do here. It also says guess, so it's going to try to guess at the best format for it. Either one of these would work, but I did that guess and it changed it. And there's some mathematical stuff. I'm not quite sure there, but I didn't say, we'll go with that. We'll hit the guess and it said this would be a better way of doing it when they look at what we brought in. Okay, again, for some reason when I hook up to a second monitor, I lose my enter or OK in the bottom. So I'm just going to hit return or enter on my keyboard. And it did that for me. So now it tells me it's at 12 frames per second, 12 frames per second, pre-multiplied in there. So I want to bring, I want to check out my composition. So this is another thing. If I select down here, the wolf pen, what I did, I double clicked it to make this visible here. And it's showing up in our, so this is my import window. This is my preview window of things that I brought in. And then this is my composition window. And this is what we'll be exporting out, so to speak. You'll see we won't export it out at this size. So we're going to crop. There's another steps we have to do to get it to export it. But we want to hear. So I want to set this to 12 frames per second also. And I want to set it, let's say minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes. I don't want it to be there. I want to set it to, I'll do 5 seconds because that's what I said to do. But 8 seconds would be better. We go to composition. Up at the top here, composition settings. So I do composition settings. Opens up this. And for some reason it's set up for 10 minutes. I don't know what the last thing I worked on was. Size, it is the size that I created it. It's 3200 by 600. So that's the size that I want to keep it at for this one. Square pixels, that's good. Frame rate, I'm going to change that to 12. You can type in 12, but After Effects has 12 as a choice. So I could drop down and choose 12. So I'm setting my frame rate to 12. And then the duration. So this is frames, seconds, minutes. So right now it's set up for 10 minutes. I'm going to set it up for 5 seconds. So I'll highlight this. And I could type in 5 semicolon 00 and click away, and that's going to be 5 seconds. It's showing me here, but I click away, so that's 5 seconds it's set up for. We'll do it. So I have that. Background color is black. You know what? I'm going to change it. No, this one is not going to matter. I'll keep it black. That's fine. It doesn't really matter because our background, if you were working with transparent, let's say I'll make it white to show you how, if you had a background that didn't have opaque colors to it and it was just line work, then you're going to want it white so you can see through it. So I clicked on this swatch. It opened up the background color box here, and I'm just going to drag up into this upper corner. And I know it's white when I see 6 Fs here, or 255, 255, 255. So it's white. Say okay. And so what I have here is 12 frames per second at 5 seconds with the white background and the original size of the background. And then it just gives me the name because I ported it in. I could change the name, but that's good. Wolfpan, I could set 3200. That gives me the length of it, so I could write full background or full BG, but the 3200 lets me know it's the full size. So, okay. So I have that. Now I can bring the kit in. So I'm going to grab, this is what I imported in as the image sequence. And I have the wolf in here. So I'm going to drag that in and put that right above the wolf layer. And he shows up over here, hidden behind the tree. So I'm going to reverse it. Now, I'm guessing most of you did a walking from left to right, and that's what I want to do. So After Effects is a little different how to flip things. So I'm going to flip it and show you if you did do it this way. If you didn't, if your character is already facing from left to right, you don't need to do this step. But if it's not, I'm doing it. So with that selected, I'm going to hit S on my keyboard to reveal the scale properties. So I hit the letter S on the keyboard, and with that layer selected, so the Isaiah layer is selected, the scale properties come up. And by default, I could scale him up or down. And let me turn that tree off so I can see through them. So I can make them whatever size I want in here. So maybe I'll go here, I like round numbers. I went to 55%. Facing the wrong direction, but I scaled them down. Now to flip them, by default, there's this little chain here, and that means constrained proportions. And that by default, that's always locked. So if I change one of these, so how I changed it was just hovered over one of these, and I could scale them up or down by dragging in there. I could type in there, but so I'm just hovering over and getting that arrow pointing left or right. And 5 there is a size, but I want to flip them. And there's no flip horizontal in After Effects. What I need to do is to unconstrain the proportions by clicking on that chain. And then on my X proportions, which is the one on the left side here, instead of being 55, I turn that to -55. And by doing that, it's going to flip them. So I did -55 and hit my enter return on my keyboard. And now he's facing the other way. So I can relock this. So if I do decide to scale him up or down, now if I scale him up or down, he'll stay facing that direction. So like I said, you won't have to do that negative flipping if you already set your character up the other way. So I have my 540. Let me turn my trees off for a second. I'm going to turn on this 720, 540. And I'm going to move that. So to move something in our frame, I'll select that layer that I want to move. Hit P on my keyboard. That gives me my position properties. And this is X, which is side to side. And this is Y, which is up and down. I'm going to hit Command Z on that. I want to move this over, so I'm starting as far over to the left as I can. That gives me enough space to move him from left to right. So with this position on the left, I can hover over that and drag that. If I hold my shift key, it moves at a faster rate. If I'm not holding my shift key, it goes slower. So I'll hold the shift key and I can bring it and set it. I'm not going to go right to the edge. So I'll say, this is what I want, where I want the kid to start. So I come back over here to the kid's layer, hit P for position again for his layer, and then position property shows up. And I'm going to take this, hover over these numbers on the left, which are my side-to-side X axis numbers, and hold the shift key and bring them back. So I'm going to set them up here. So that's our rule of thirds, right? He's not center screen, get a little bit in front of him, so we'll follow him as he goes through the scene. So I don't need to see this wolf character again. I can turn it off. In this case, I can. It's still in my project, but if I hit delete or backspace, it takes them out of there. I don't need that in there. I'll leave this on here for right now. And when you have the position, so this, I come back here, I hit P again, it will close it. Those you, so P again, close it. Another way to do it, and those that have worked with After Effects know this, that there's a little triangle over here on the layer and gives me the transform properties. And then I can get all the properties at one time that I can adjust. I said use P and S. So P for position, scale for size. That's what we were doing earlier. You could do that, or you can do it manually that way. So I just took that triangle and rolled everything up. It just makes it easier to see things in your timeline, with those things expanded or not. So I'm seeing position here because that's all I need to concentrate on. So I have that. So to get that again, with the layer selected, hit P on the keyboard, hides it, P on the keyboard, reveals it. So what I want to do is move him in this scene, before I do anything else, from here to there. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to turn the 720 off for right now. There's something else I could do. I'm just going to keep it less complicated. Close that off. So I have the Isaiah layer. I'm going to move them here. So what I want to make sure is I'm at 0, 0 on my timeline. And I'm going to insert a keyframe. So Bree and Alec, you never used After Effects for it. Put your first keyframe in. You click on this stopwatch icon to the left of the word position. And you only have to do that the first time. So to put your initial first keyframe in per layer, you need to click the stopwatch. And what it did is put a keyframe here at frame 0, 0, right here at the beginning. Now I want to come to the end of this 5 seconds. So those of you who have it on your computers, you may have a home or end key. You can click the home or end key. On my Mac, I have to hit function and then my right arrow key, and it brings me to the end. But the end and time code will be 4, if you did 5 seconds as I did, 4:11. Now it says 11 because we're at 12 frames per second, so that's one more frame before 12, so that would where we would be at 4:11. Now I don't need to hit the stopwatch again. What I'm going to do is move the character down the timeline to it's going to be about here because I want to make sure I have that rule of thirds stuff going and I have that frame. Now I could have brought that frame with me, but like I said, I want to keep it less complicated. But I'm going to put them about here on my scene. To do that, I'm going to come back to my position and I'm going to move just the X position here, the one on the left, and hold my shift key. As I hover over it, I'm getting a little finger with 2 arrows pointing left and right in here, and hold my shift key, and I'm going to drag him over here. And you see he's dragging in a straight line. You can see the path. It's a straight line, and I'll bring him to about here. So this is just the starting point. So I moved him from here to here. Now what I have to look at is he's going from here to here in 5 seconds, and I have a walk cycle. And remember when we did our walk cycle, we tried to get the feet to slide in even increments. So I want to see if he's sliding forward or slipping backwards. And as I'm looking at this, and I'm going to hit my space bar just to play it, it looks like he's sliding forward. You can see as he puts his feet down, it looks like he's skating forward. Let me stop that a second and zoom up on that. And we'll look at this here. As he comes into scene, you see him slipping forward. What that's telling me, and I can step through this and see that, as he puts his foot down here, if I look at where it's aligned with that little bit behind there, the little piece of grass, as I go forward a frame. Now, some of your keyboards might have page up or page down. Page up and down moves frame by frame in After Effects. On my Mac, I need to do function and then the up and down keys. So if I hold my function key and go down key, he's going forward. And I can see that foot is skating forward. See, it's moving forward a little bit. I'm looking at the plant foot. This is the foot that's on the ground. It should stay in the same spot. It shouldn't move backwards or it shouldn't move forward. But it is sliding forward. So this next one goes down and it's right here. If I put my arrow there, that's where the heel is there. If I go forward, look as it goes. It slid that much forward. So what that's telling me is in my 5 seconds, when I go to my last keyframe, I went too far of a distance. So I have to back the kid up a little bit. But I need to do that. This is important that you make sure you go to this keyframe. You don't move it here. You only want to have these 2 keyframes, the start and the end keyframe. So if I'm going to make any adjustments, I made the adjustment on the last keyframe where he ends up. So in the 5 seconds, he's going too far to the size he is and his background. So there's no set way to say, okay, go this far to go to this point, because all our characters are going to be different. All our feet may be moving a little different. So there's no set way. So you need to take this process to try to get his feet, their feet, the character's feet to look like where they're planted on the ground. And we'll get there and I'll show you what it's going to look like. For right now, as we're doing this, he's like skating forward a little bit as he's walking. We want to feel like that foot plants, goes down, plants, goes down. So that's our goal. So I need to get to this keyframe. To get to that keyframe, there's two ways. On this layer in the position, there's this diamond, and I don't want to remove any keyframes, but I can go to previous or go to next. And so I hit that go to next. It jumps me to that keyframe. I know I'm on that keyframe because this diamond is now highlighted in blue. Now I need to move over. So I'm on my space bar and move over. It actually, this part doesn't. So I'm here. I want to back them up. How far to back them up? We'll have to go back and forth to see. We'll have to see how far it needs to back up to get that foot to feel like it's planting. But before I move them backwards, I want to make sure I'm on this keyframe. That's very important. So now that I am on that keyframe, I could use my arrow keys and I can use my shift key so I can push them back. So if I my left arrow key to move them backwards to the left, and my shift key will go, instead of doing little increments, I think I'm going to need some bigger increments. So I'm going to go 1, 2. I'll see how that looks. So that actually moved them back like 20 pixels. So when you hold your shift key, it does 10 pixels at a time. So I went 1, 2 forward, and I go 1, 2 back. So I moved them back there. We can even check. I didn't check those numbers, but when you do it, you can check those numbers. So now I want to back them up and see what that foot's looking like. So as it comes through, still skating forward a little bit. See the foot slides. That foot slides forward in between those two. So I need to come back to my keyframe, and you could use these arrows here on your keyboard. If you do J or K, the letter K on your keyboard brings you to the next keyframe, to the right. If I hit the letter J, it brings me to the next keyframe to the left. So I'll hit K, it brings me to that keyframe. And if you forget those numbers, you can always just click between these. But I want to make sure I am on this keyframe. I'm here, and I'm going to hold my shift key again, and I'm going to step back 2 more spaces. So on my left arrow on my keyboard, 1. Wait, I'm going to go forward. I don't know what I did. Might hit the wrong thing, but 1, 2. I'll go back. I'll come back and see it again. So we'll look at this. It's actually still going a little bit forward. See that foot? I'm watching this foot here as it moves. A little bit of a slide forward. And I'm going to watch how this one moves. Still a little slide forward there, right? So I'm going to go back to hit the letter K, get back on this keyframe, and I'm going to step it back 2 more frames. So this is the process, how far to go back. 1, 2, and see if that was too far or enough. How it's still sliding. So it's close. So K again. I'll go 1, 2, 3 this time and see if I went too far. Still slight slide. Now there might be some sliding in here because we didn't get even increments on everything, but it's still sliding. So yeah, you still got to go forward a little more. I'm aligned up. Every time you change it, you want to make sure you're on this keyframe. 1, 2, that gonna do it. Wow, still sliding. All right, K, and go. I'm gonna go 2 more again. 1, 2, and that looks pretty good. Boom. So it's pretty good. Actually, probably could even go back even a little more. Wow. All right, so we've moved them back a lot of steps. If you look at what we did, it was a little bit of a slide, but it makes a difference. Still sliding. All right, let's get 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. See if we can get them to set. Now, you might not get it exactly if your feet didn't move exactly. All right, that's looking better. Look, when he puts his foot down. The idea is to look like the foot staying planted on the ground. All right, so this is taking a little bit of finagling, and that looks better. And it may not be exact because you may not have the feet moving exactly the same increments, but you get it close. So, all right, it took me 5 minutes, 10 minutes to go back and forth there, bum, 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 but that's what I want. So if I come out here to fit in window and have this and hit my space bar to play it. So it looks like his feet are planting on the ground. He's not sliding forward. He's walking through that scene. Not going as far, but in that 5 seconds, that's what works for the size of the character, the stride he's taking in this background. So it's very subjective to the size of the stride, the size of the character. You know, if I enlarge the character, then I have to do this process all over again because it'll be going a different distance in this background. Okay, you have that. I'm gonna hit save. I didn't save this yet, so I'm gonna do a file save as. And there's Isaiah Walk Cycle Project. I guess I'll call it this. I made one earlier. I called it T1. I'm going to call this T2. Save it. It's in a folder where you know it's saved. It's in the same folder. The background's not in this folder, but the PNGs that we brought in are in this folder, so they're all together. So that's kind of important that you're keeping them things together. Okay. That was the easy part. So, you guys still there? What time we have? 12 o'clock we're getting to. So I had done this. I ended up doing this last week, is finished up my walk cycle and put those up on as movies. So I probably can finish this off. So you guys can stay around. I'll keep working. I know kind of class only goes to 12:30, I guess, is our scheduled time. So if you want to stay, I think I can get this done in the next half hour. But we're in there. All right. So we have the walking. The feet aren't sliding. And the background elements are all here. Now we got to make our final scene that's going to be, and I'll, just because I have all my documentation set up with this, we'll go with this file size. So we want to create a document that is 720 by 540. It's going to be at 12 frames per second and a 5-second scene. So how do we go about doing that? We come up to composition at the top, new composition, first choice here, composition, new composition. And we do that. It kind of gives us all the same information from our previous one. So we want to make some changes. First, we'll name it. So this is going to be my Isaiah Walk. And then I will just maybe I'll give it the name of my file size. So I'll do it 720 x 540. So I'll know what it is there. And then for me, you guys don't have to do this. I'll do 2020. I'll just do a 2 after it. So I don't know what. All right. So I named it. You can name it for where you need it. I want square pixels. But what I want to change here are my width and height. So right here it says lock aspect ratio. And I want to make sure that's unchecked. I do not want my aspect ratio to be checked because I'm going to change that. This is a very long composition that started. And I want to make it more of a smaller rectangle, less wide rectangle compared to the height. So I'm going to uncheck that. Width, I'm going to type in 720. And my height, I'm going to do 540. I have square pixels. My frame rate, because of the last composition, it remembers that. So that's good. And my duration and size. Now the background color, I am going to change. Yeah. So no, you don't have to. I was going to change it for me because I have an opaque background. And if you don't have an opaque background, by opaque, I mean it's colored in gray. You can't see through the layers. So that's opaque. If you have just line art, I would suggest making opaque. But I'm going to show us something. I'm going to make this bright pink so I can tell if I have any gaps in my background. So that's why I'm doing this bright pink, because the backgrounds would be opaque. I shouldn't be able to see through the background anywhere. And if I'm seeing pink through my background, then I know I have a gap somewhere that I could try to close. All right. So I say, okay. So it's set up. I named it, changed the size, 720x40, 12 frames per second, and the duration is set for 5 seconds. So I'll hit OK. And it made this new scene here, and there's nothing in it. So what I want to do is copy those elements from our previous scene and bring them into this scene. So to do that, I'll come back. So along the top here, where my timeline area, so the timeline, we have our layers, and the timeline is here to the right. But on the top, it has our different compositions. So this was the first composition we were working with. So I'm going to come back to that and have all these layers. I'll roll this up for now. You don't need to see that. And I'm going to select all these layers. I could bring that in. I don't really need it, but I'll bring in the 720x40. Actually, I don't need it because I set the composition up for that. So I'm going to take that tree one. So I'm going to select all my layers, hold my shift key so it selects all these layers, and I'll do a Command C or Control C to copy them. You could do edit copy. Yep. And that's Control or Command C. So I copied all those layers, and I'll come back to this composition, the one we just made. And I'll click inside of my layers area here on the left. And I'll do a Command V or Control V to paste those layers. And there I have them pasted in there. Okay, so if I do this, hey, where'd he go? Come back. All right, so he went away. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky for those of us who have used After Effects before. We're going to look at using our 3D world, and we're going to make these 3D layers, bring in a camera, and we're going to follow the kid as he walks from left to right. So we pasted these layers in here. I'll turn my trees back on. So my trees are back on. And layers are all still selected. And I'm going to hit this icon. If you're not seeing this, you can maybe click down at the bottom left. You get this expand or collapse layers. We want to have these icons showing. So we have motion blur, adjustment layer, and 3D layer. So the 3D layers is cube icon, and we want to select, and because all these are selected now, we'll put them in all of them at one time. But we follow down vertically this box from there. So if I click on this box here or underneath the 3D cube, now they're all 3D layers. Visually, nothing's happened. So if I unselect them, we can't tell the difference. So when I select it, visually nothing's happened yet. We have to manipulate these layers in space to make it feel like something's happening. All right, so we make them 3D layers. Then the next step we want to do is bring a camera, a 3D camera into our project so we can follow it with that camera. So I'll deselect these layers. I'll select the first one. The reason I select the first one, when I make a new layer or a camera, it puts it on top of the layer that's selected. So I'll put my camera on top. So to bring a camera in, we come up to Layer, New, Camera. So I have that. I was just looking up to see there, the camera. And what kind of camera to bring in? We want to make sure it's a 1-node camera. So there's a choice between 2-node. And I think by default in After Effects, when you guys do it the first time, it probably will say 2-node. So switch that to 1-node. It's 2-node means you have control over here and you have control over here. So let's just switch it back to see if it shows me that. No, it doesn't show it in this image. But a 2-node camera, you control the camera and you control where the camera is pointing to. We just want to control the camera. We don't want to have that extra variable of where it's pointing to. So we'll choose a 1-node camera for this project. Camera 1's fine. We don't have to rename it. And size, we'll go 24 millimeter. That's going to give us a little bit of a wider angle shot. It's still going to do our scene, but we'll pick that one, the 24 millimeter. So enable depth of field, lock. We'll leave those off for now. We'll create our depth of field by putting some blurs on there. It gets a little more complicated getting into those, so we'll keep it simpler. So those don't need to be checked. Millimeters, we'll just keep it all as it is. So one node and a preset of 24 millimeter lens, and then we can say okay. So we'll put our camera in here, and really we haven't seen too much of a difference. It still looks like the same scene that we had set up, and that's okay. So now this is where we're going to create depth. So After Effects works that it's flat 2D artwork we're dealing with. But since we've made them 3D layers, we have now, prior to being 3D, I'll open up the Isaiah layer and I'll hit P for position. We had X and Y. Now we have a Z layer. So a Z layer is coming towards us or going away from us in the field. So we're creating some depth. So all our layers that we made 3D prior to this, when they were just 2D before we converted them to 3D, they only had our X and Y positions. Now that we converted them to 3D, now we have that third depth, the Z plane, we call that we can move it back and forth. So that's what happened there. Now what we want to do is create that depth with our different layers. So we have our sky, our mountains, our midground, and Isaiah. We want to keep Isaiah and our midground. We're going to keep them right where they are, but we're going to bring our trees closer to the camera, and we're going to push our sky and our mountains further away from the camera. So we're going to create some depth in this scene to get that parallax panning effect. To do that, right now, we have this one view, and that's our generic view of working with After Effects, but I think a lot of you guys do take the 3D with Joe, and you know you can have different viewports and see things from different angles. So we're going to go to two viewports here. So what we're going to do is down here at the bottom of our composition window, it says one view. We're going to click on that drop down arrow, and we're going to do two views horizontal. So that sets up these two views here. And when I click here, I get these blue triangles in the corner. That means that's the active one. So I'm going to actually close this up so I get a little more room. I can open up this a little bit so we can see this a little bit better, a little more. I don't need to use those elements. So I'm trying to create some space here. So I'm in two views horizontal, and whichever view is active, that's sort of, if I'm making adjustments, I'm making it to this view. Or if I come over here and click over here, I'm making it to this view. Now this one says top view, and that's what I do want. And this one says active camera. So the active camera view is what you're going to see when you export. So that's your final look. And to change those views, here in the top view here, that option comes here. So we have the two views. To the left of that, it says top. It's because these blue triangles, this area is selected. I could switch that to front, and then it's kind of looking like that. Custom view one, we're looking at it from the side. So the different views, I want this from the top view. I'm just showing you that you have options of different views to look at things. So we want that from the top on this left hand, and then active camera here, because we want to see what our final view is and what we're seeing and what we have to adjust as we do it. So I want to go to my sky background, and I'm not seeing here's my camera. This icon here, if I click on the camera, that shows me what my camera's seeing. Right now, all these layers are on the zero plane. They're all lined up together. I want to push my sky way back, and I'm not constrained to this pink box. I can push that sky way back in space away from the camera. I'm going to push the mountains, not quite as far as the sky, but I'm going to push them back. With the midground and Isaiah there, I'm going to keep them right where they are, and then I'm going to bring my two trees forward. So where are they in relation to the camera? By default, they're all on this one line. So if I take my sky, and I like to do it with the numbers, with the properties. So I hit P for position, and I think I want to move it to the right. So I got X, Y, and Z. So I'm changing my Z position, and I'm going to take that, and I can hold my shift key, and I'm going to push that way back. And I can even go further. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm seeing this pink now. That's all right. I'm going to scale it up, and it's okay because it's going to be further back in space. Bring that back. I want to push it way far away from my camera. So I said we're not constrained to this, the box there. It's a little deceiving if sometimes you feel it. So I'm just going to push that back. And where am I going with it? So I push it way back, and now it's showing up here as this small thing. It's back. It's further. We don't even see it. It's way back there. So what I want to do is scale it up and make sure that I'm seeing it in this frame, that it's covered in here. So I did the position. I pushed it way back. Let's see. I went to 13.7. I'm going to type in a number. I'm going to go 1500. I'm just going to type in 1500 there. All right. So way back, it's small, showing up here. So I'll hit the S for scale, and I can enlarge it. And I made it larger. And then I can reposition it so it's covered there. I could even actually come in here. This is where I can manually grab it. It looks like I'm going to have to go bigger with it. So I'm going to go even bigger. And then I want this center piece to be off screen, because I know the center of my screen's off to the right more. So as I scaled it up, I can hit P for position again and move it over. And I'm going to keep moving it over till I see my edge over here on the left-hand side. So I don't want to go too far. So I want to bring that back here, and then I can move it up a little bit. So it's covered there. And because the sky is so simple, you know, I'm not worrying about it getting a little pixely in this for what we're doing here. It's okay. And there's ways we can work around that if we created it in After Effects. I mean, in Illustrator, then we do this, then it wouldn't change the proportion. So that's why Illustrator and After Effects work well together. Okay, so I move my sky away from my camera. So if I come back here and I look, there's my camera. My sky is way back here. So I click on my sky layer. That's it here. Out a little bit. So my sky layer is way back. Now I'm going to put my mountains somewhere in between there. So here's my midground. That's going to stay the same. So I'm going to push my mountains back here somewhere. Not quite as far as the sky. So I'll go to this layer and I'll hit P. I could grab it here, but you want to make sure if you do grab it in the scene, if I hover over this here, I'm seeing that letter Z to the right of my pointer, and I could click and drag back. I don't like doing that because you could accidentally move it in a different direction. It may not work. So I'd like using my things there. I will do it here just to show you can. So if I hover over it, to the right of the cursor, there's a letter Z. So I know I'm working on the Z axis, the Z plane there. And as I drag it back in space, see my mountains getting smaller as they're going back. And probably there. So they're further away. I want to create some space between the midground and the mountains, but I don't want to put it back quite as far as the sky. So I've done that. So again, I'm seeing the edge there. So I do need to scale them up. And I could scale them a couple ways. I could drag this here, but I'm going to scale it with this S scale. So my mountain layer, come here, hit S to scale. And I'll bring that up a bit. And I'll bring it to there. I may have to, as I come through this, move it around a little bit. So I hit P for position. And I just raise them up a little bit on the X, Y, and Z. So I went 864 back and I'll lift it up a little bit. So I have that. And now I want to bring my trees to the foreground. For my midground, Isaiah and the midground, the ground he's working on, I'm not going to change them. I'm going to keep them right here in the center and that distance from the camera. But what I do want to change is bring my trees closer. So I have two trees in mind. So I'm going to bring this one tree, which is the one we're looking at here. I could grab the Z plane there and bring that forward. And I can go on the X axis, bring it over to the right a little bit. So when it's not there at the very beginning of the scene. Now the next tree is going to be tougher because it's over here somewhere. It's like right here. So I'm not going to be able to see it visually at this point in my timeline. I can manipulate it later, but I am going to look at it. So it shows me it's here. this one tree is here. Maybe I want to make this tree even closer to the camera. I don't want to put it behind the camera. So here's my camera. I just want to make sure it's not behind the camera. It's a little bit closer to the camera, and I'll put it there. So what we did, we copied these layers. We first had him make sure that he walked across that oversized background. His feet weren't sliding. We took those layers, copied and pasted them into this layer at the 720, 540 size. Then we converted those layers to 3D layers. We brought in our camera, and then we went into our two views and changed the depth the way they are in the distance from the camera. And now we want to pan our camera. So he's walking from left to right. So we're going to put keyframes on our camera and see where it kind of follows him going from left to right. So I'm going to go to my camera. And at this point, I can come back to one view. I have this set up. If I need to, I can always pop back here. But I'm going to come back to one view. So I have this. Just concentrate here on this for right now. And I'm going to go camera P for position of my camera. So I want it to start here. So I'm going to put my first keyframe, make sure I'm at 000 frame here. And if I did move this at all, that I am before I put that keyframe in, I'm at 000. I click the stopwatch to put in the initial keyframe. And now I want to come down to the end. So you hit the end on your keyboard. You can go to frame 411. I could type that in here. If I type in just 411, if I hit enter or return, it brings me right to the end. All right, so I don't see the kid. So what I need to do with my position of my thing, I had put the first keyframe in here, so I don't need to, I don't need to, and I don't want to hit that stopwatch again. If you hit the stopwatch again, it clears out that first keyframe. So I do it just for the first one. And now I'm going to move the x-axis. So I want to move my camera, which is here. I want to move it over to the right. So on the x-axis here, I'm going to pan over and even look how that tree moves. As we go past it, you see how we're getting that depth in that background, but we want to find our kid. So if I hold my shift key, I'll move it faster. And I want to come to here, and he's kind of positioned in where I started him in the rule of thirds here. So in that 5 seconds, that's where he's going to go. So I'm going to hit my space bar and we'll see what we have. And my background's not perfect. I have that pink showing through, but we're creating that parallax depth, and he's going through the scene. And that's what we're going for, just this. So we have time next week. I'll show you. We're going to export this in 2 ways. So I'm not sure where everybody is going to be on this right now. So next week, I'll show us how to export it out and do it. But if you get this far, that'd be great to get it here. We are going to want it when I want you to submit it. I want you to submit it one way, that the character is just walking in place, just your normal, that he's not moving, no camera movement. Then we're going to have this view we're going to submit. And then we're going to submit a view where we set him in the scene and he walks from left to right through the scene and the camera doesn't move. So we'll look at those, but we can go to next week. We do have time on this, and then I'll show you, we can put a blur on this tree. So, and it kind of does feel like it's blurred out a bit because when we moved it closer to the camera. But if we look at it, we have this peak of this mountain and the edge of the tree is there. As we go through, that peak of the mountain's here and the whole tree went past. So that's moving a lot slower than the tree is. And that's what we call the parallax panning effect. It's simple, subtle, but it gives depth to our scene. This 2D, simple cutout animation scene, we've created some depth in here. All right, so yeah, so Bree, yeah, if you send me your project just to see how it is, just set it up for the walk. If you want to show me or you see that. Anyone else have any questions? Now, I talked about at the beginning of class. Some guys still hanging out. You know, let me know what's going on. So everything prior to spring break was the flour sack. So we did the bouncy ball. We did the in-between, the bird in-between, and the flour sack. Those were all prior to our spring break. So some of you still owe me some of those. So I want you to send me an email and tell me where you are with them, what's going on. And I know we don't have the Cintiqs to finish it. So we'll have to look at what you have right now and send that to me and see where you are. So send me an email. Let me know where you're at with those. And then we still have our model sheets. Some are missing those and some are missing rigging the character. So our model sheets, we talked about drawing them on paper. If you want to make a nice clean line before you bring them into your computer, you can tape them up to the window, trace over them with a pencil or a marker, get a nice clean line, shoot them in with your camera, and either trace them over using the Bezier vector art or use Photoshop to color it in. Anyone has any questions on that, let me know. So if you're missing those projects and you don't know how to finish them, you have to send me an email. We're not going to do it here in front of everybody, but send me an email and let me know what you need help with. Because I want you guys to be successful and get this done. We're going along, but we still have to work to see to get, at least this walk cycle done. We're going to look at what we're going to do for the dances. It was be our final project that we would do. We'll see where we get to on that, but we want to definitely get this walk cycle done in our time frame, and it's doable. But it has to be. We have, if I'm going to help you, you have to let me know what you need help with. So send me an email. So that's what I have for today. I know I've been talking there, 2.5 hours here going on. Any questions before we sign off? You guys went for lunch already? I don't know. I can't see anybody, so who's there? So, okay. I see some private messages, and that's good. Just do what you got to do. I want to make sure that if you do whatever you're gonna do, like the walk, it works. It feels like it has it up and down. That you're using those templates, either one of those templates, to get that bounce up and down. I would go with the cutout pieces. Bones are possible. Bones are complicated. These pieces, nothing is easy. There's no like push a button and make it happen. You have to set those key poses and make it work. But I do believe that doing this cutout way, the way this kit is set up and the way we did them in Animate with these pieces and rotating the pieces along the timeline is going to be the easiest way of doing it to start. But if you do compelled to use bones, just think of doing the arm as a single bone layer, the leg as a single bone layer, do them in pieces that way. Anybody else? Any questions? All right, well, thanks for showing up. I will put this up. Maybe this one I'll just do the whole video so you can kind of look through and find the places. But I do have these, so let me just point out. So I've done this before, and I am going to go to the assignment that's due. So let's find that real quick. Assignments and the walk cycle assignment. Assessment. Come on. Yeah. So this, I went through this process already in here. So this is when we used to draw the characters. So I asked the students to make the characters opaque before they brought them out of Photoshop. This one's going to be a little obsolete. Won't know it, but this is setting up our background. This is importing into After Effects and setting the interpret the footage and setting the frame rate and looping the file so it loops X amount of times. So that's that. And then setting up the walk across a longer background. So make sure the feet don't slide. So my feet were sliding forward and I kept moving the character backwards. If your feet look like they're slipping in place, like he's walking on a banana peel and they're slipping, then you want to push them forward to the right. And make sure you're always on that last keyframe when you're making adjustments. And this is setting up the Parallax pan. I'll do today's assignment too, but these are there if you want to get to it before I get the other ones up, and I'll put them in announcements to let you know I post them up there.